My name is Gary Dolley. I'm the project manager for South African hockey.
Thank you very much, Gary, and thank you for joining us today. Really grateful for you being here. My first question to you is why is South Africa Hockey Association investing in this hockey school program? Can you tell us a bit about the strategy behind it and the goals and the outcomes that SAHA is trying to achieve?
Andre, that's a very, very interesting question. I think that to understand the South African context, I need to just talk about our education system firstly. In the country, we have an estimated 25,000 schools. And of the 25,000 schools, you would have 3,000 well-resourced schools. And on the other hand, you'll have 22,000 poorly or under-resourced schools. So our growth strategy needs to take into account the two, let's call it sectors, almost a formal sector and an informal sector, if we want to impact and be relevant. So our model at the moment, in fact, is a mixed model, trying to consolidate, in fact, the more, let's call it, the formal sector, to consolidate the programs that we have there, and then the informal sector or the under-resourced sector, gives us a huge opportunity from a growth perspective to increase our capacity within those communities as well.
Thank you very much. That is a big help because it helps us understand, let's say, the gaps of provision that you guys are trying to fill in. Could you tell us a bit what the goals and outcomes that you have for trying to fill these gaps that you just mentioned?
Yeah. So basically, if you have a look at the structure is underpinned by two key, let's call it, pillars. And the first pillar would be to increase, in fact, the participation base in both sectors. That's the first pillar. The second pillar, we talk about coach education, because you cannot grow the game or the base if you don't have quality coaches. So what we have done in this particular approach is to consolidate, in fact, our coach education system, and we have aligned our coach education system with our player pathway as well. So let me give you an indication, right? Our strategy thus is to link, right, our growth strategy within the physical education sector with informal education, because the physical education sector within the primary schools, that would be now your junior schools, have allocated in a 5-day cycle 2 hours for physical education. So strategically, if we want to make any impact or inroads into that 22,000 under-resourced schools, the physical education route gives us a strategy to base our programs within that particular schools. So we've linked, in fact, the program with fundamental movement skills, and linked to the fundamental movement skills, we talk about sports skills, and in particular now hockey as the conduit to be able to get into those schools as well. So in a nutshell, the key thing for us is to promote physical education, right, through fundamental movement skills and apply that in modified games, which hockey is part of. And the reason why we've done that this strategy, number one, is very, very cost effective, because while we've modified the equipment, we use plastic sticks, we have different colors, we have a bigger ball, right? The program is needs driven. It is focused on the participants' needs. It is linked to our long-term participants development framework. And also we talk about the development of the whole child. And it is very, very relevant, specifically now within COVID, that the program is an educational program, but we are using hockey as a conduit to promote, in fact, modified sport within that particular sector.
So when you mean, do I understand correctly that your program is actually a complementary approach to the existing physical education classes?
That's correct, yeah. You see, for us to occupy that particular space, right, we are using the fundamental movement skills and we are linking that to hockey-specific skills. Let I give you an example. If you have a look at the fundamental movement skills, the 3 fundamental movement skills will talk about locomotion. That's movement. So our synergy there is movement with the ball, forehand dribble, right? That becomes now, linking the fundamental movement skill with the hockey specific fundamental skill. If you have a look at the balance, which is the fundamental movement skill, the stance and the body distribution, body weight, right? And how you carry the ball would be part of balancing, right? Within the sport specific skill, which is in fact your stance. When it comes to the fundamental movement skill of manipulation, the hockey related skill to that would be the grip on the stick. So that is the way we synergize, in fact, the fundamental movement skill, and we link it now to the sporting skill. And in particular now, we talk about hockey specific fundamentals as well. So that's the way, it gives us a massive opportunity now to train teachers, right, from areas where there's no hockey footprint or, no history of hockey within that under-resourced schools.
You referred earlier to informal training. Could you give us a bit more understanding of what that is, or what you mean by that?
We have a formal structure. We've aligned, in fact, our coach education pathway with the FIH. So we would have if it's a level 0, it talks about modified hockey, which is a certificate-based participation certificate. Now, what we've done there, we've made it very, very simplified, and we are targeting, in fact, the physical education teachers, right, within those schools that do not have a hockey background. So it's a more of, taking the hand of the teacher in a very informal, let's call it setting or an environment, and really promoting participation through a fun and an enjoyable environment to promote, in fact, sport within those particular communities.
So could we call it like a coaching course for teachers, something like that?
Quite correct. In fact, even the terminology that we've used, we remember the 2 structures. We would have a formal coach education, let's call it accreditation. So what we have done, we even changed, in fact, the terminology that we use, right? And the vocabulary, because the target market here is educators or teachers that do not have any background in hockey and in many other sporting codes as well. So the target market here is, in fact, the teaching, right? Teachers that do not have any training within physical education, but these teachers are teaching, right, within that particular under-resourced schools.
Well, thank you. That looks quite exciting. Could you tell us a bit now about how that is delivered? So how do you deliver these programs into schools, and why do you choose that specific delivery strategy?
The under-resourced schools, there's a huge opportunity. You can imagine 22,000 schools translates into about 8 million participants within the youth sector. Now that is from the ages between, in fact, 7 to 18 years old. So what we have done, our delivery methodology has 5 components, which is in fact age appropriate. So the first component we talk about the fundamental movement skills and linking that now to the sports skills, and in particular hockey now. So we've developed, in fact, a hockey program that is used as a station within physical education during school time, right? Another strategy there is that this particular program can be delivered on any smooth surface, irrespective if it is a car park or a piece of tar, in a classroom, in a street, because we only require a smooth surface. So it is very, very cost effective to operate that particular system within that, let's call it phase. That's the first phase. The second phase, we talk about an intra-class, that is within the class, right? Kids have an opportunity to use the modified equipment, right, and get exposure in terms of the fundamental movement skills as well as the fundamental hockey skills. That is within the class. And the third component is the interclass. So the interclass refers to within the junior setup, you'll have a standard 3A or grade 3A playing against 3B. That's the interclass competition. Also, it increases participation and it gives kids an opportunity to be physically active in a very fun and an enjoyable environment. That would be the third phase. The fourth phase, now we start grouping the schools in a certain geographic area, which we refer to as a hub or a cluster, right? And we refer to that as a neighborhood league. So there we require 6 schools within a 5-kilometer radius, right, to participate within that particular community. And the reason why we're doing that is it decreases, in fact, the cost. It's very, very cost effective because people do not move out of the residential area where they are, where the schools are based. So we don't spend a lot of money on transport, etc. And that is a massive program, and our neighborhood program that we've activated throughout the country. And then the final phase is, the promotion of community-based junior clubs, where clubs, right, that is located where the schools are, form partnerships with the schools, and they form, in fact, under 13 junior modified club hockey. So that is the first phase of this modified program that we have, in fact, activated over the last 3 years.
So, well, my first question after what you've just said is, your relationship with these schools or with whoever is in charge of their administration must be a key element in this, right?
Definitely. In fact, you'll notice that what we've done for the last 15 years, we were training, in fact, within it's called the South African Sports for Life sector, right? So that gives you a possibility of the 3,000 well-resourced schools, because they've got the infrastructure to be able to do that, right? We have changed the focus now to the other 22,000 schools, because immediately there, right, there's huge potential in terms of growth. And the reason why we're doing that is precisely because physical education is critical. And we are talking about, we need to have compulsory physical education, right, within those schools. And then hockey is basically a conduit for us to be able to get a footprint into those schools as well. So strategically, we are working very closely now to get the endorsement from the Department of Education. We have a couple of endorsements locally, but ultimately our objective is to get our program endorsed via the Department of Education within the physical education sphere.
So how does this work in terms of organization? Do you send coaches to schools? Do you just train the teachers and then expect them to deliver hockey at school? How does this work in terms of operations?
So let I give you a typical example. Let I use, in fact, the Gauteng area, which received, in fact, one of the best practices because of the implementation of the program. So it's referred to as a district. So what we will do, in fact, we'll identify a school in a particular community that shows an interest in sport, and in particular that have a history of physical education, right? Then around that school, what we will do, we'll identify at least 5 additional schools that is interested in hosting the program. So that is the first that we ascertain. We do a needs assessment as well as a feasibility study. What of the schools in that particular area is interested in a physical education program using hockey as a conduit? Once we've identified those particular schools, right, there's a standard form that we send to the schools, a letter of that they are interested in our program. They would nominate 3 educators or 3 teachers within the physical education or life skills program, right? We will train those teachers. Firstly, we will train those teachers, a 2-hour workshop on the implementation of the program. And after the training, the schools will sign a commitment letter, and they would receive, in fact, a startup kit that comprises, in fact, the modified equipment, the balls, the sticks, the beacons, as well as all the resource material. That is a very informal, let's call it now, approach. The formal approach is that these teachers, right, they then do a level 0 as part of our continuous training. And that is the way the program is rolled out throughout the country. But remember also now that our regional federations, we have in each region, we have a regional coordinator for our modified program that will communicate via a WhatsApp group to the schools that we've identified. So there is a database of the 500 schools that we've activated throughout the country and the names of the teachers in a particular database as well.
Is there a particular way that you do that you manage the relationship with those schools, or is that done more on a local basis? Is there some sort of annual moment, or is there? Tell us about, because what I'm thinking, and I'm also, when I hear your program, I'm also thinking of other programs in other parts of the world, and I'm thinking that the way this relationship with the schools is managed is probably one of the key factors for the success. So if you could give us a bit of an idea about how you guys manage that particular situation.
Within South Africa, right, we have, which we refer to as 52 districts. So in each district, there will be a number of schools. We have the footprint of all the schools that's currently there in those 52 districts. And the ultimate objective is to have a footprint of, a modified program in all 52 districts as well. So strategically, what we do, we'll identify a district, okay? And then we have the selection of between 6 and 8 schools to constitute, which we refer to as a hub. So we would appoint, in fact, a hub coordinator, the person that will liaise with the 8 schools. So they would form, in fact, a WhatsApp group and communicate via the WhatsApp group as well. And then we'll also have a provincial WhatsApp group. So if you look at the Gauteng area, in Gauteng, you will have 5 districts. So we will have 5 district coordinators, and they would constitute, in fact, let's call it the provincial structure as well. So when I liaise, I would liaise with the provincial coordinator as the national driver of the program. Once a year, I would have a workshop with the 9 provinces to evaluate the program, to change the program, and in turn, the 9 provincial coordinators will have their own provincial, let's call it, structure, where these local coordinators or district coordinators, they in fact filter into that particular structure as well. So currently we have a footprint in 30 of the districts. We still have 22 to go. So I would have 30 coordinators, right? And in certain cases, there are more than one hub within that particular district or province as well. There's a lot of communication nationally between myself and the local coordinators and the provincial coordinators. And this is all driven, in fact, by volunteers. The provincial coordinators, they receive a stipend via our national funder, which is the Itotal Foundation. But we have ceased that particular program now because of COVID.
One last question before we move into the review of how this experience has been. Apart from the schools, are there, you mentioned, I think, also municipalities. You mentioned about the Ministry of Education. Can you give us an idea what are the stakeholders that are involved in here? Because in some projects in other parts of the world, we see that this is actually quite a big puzzle that NAs need to put together. So how does your puzzle look like?
Andre, that's a very, very important question. And I think when I started off, I tried to contextualize, the landscape, the educational landscape in the country, which basically, would be also the social economic landscape in the country. Well-resourced institutions, right? And they're poorly under-resourced. So again, within the well-resourced, the 3,000 schools, they all formally affiliated to these SA schools hockey. Very, very well resourced. Within that particular sector, you'll have close to 200 top-class artificial surfaces. So some of those schools are rated top schools, in fact, in terms of infrastructure at any standard in the world as well. So that is the one, let's call it now, extreme. We have very, very good programs within that particular sector, under 13 programs, or under 16 and under 18 programs. So the key partner there would be, in fact, the well-resourced schools, because they've got the infrastructure and the financial resources to be able to deliver a sports program, right? Because South Africa is a developing country, right? It is critical that we also have and address the needs, the social needs within that other 22,000 schools I'm talking about. So there again, right, because of a lot of dysfunctionality and a lot of challenges in terms of infrastructure, we needed to modify our approach. That's the reason why, we're using, in fact, plastic six, very, very, very durable, very durable. It can be used on any surface. So we have transformed the way of our thinking. So our thinking is more, developmental in terms of how do we get those kids and how do we give them an opportunity to be able to then get into, for a better word, into the formal structure by participating regularly and developing, the fundamental movement skills as well as the technical skills on those surfaces. At the moment, as I said, we have a very good funder. We have a national funder, the Untitled Foundation. What we're trying to do now is to get smaller funders that's regionally based, to take ownership of the programs and also to link now some of these schools with our clubs that's well resourced as well. So it is a mixed model that we are trying to, in fact, now get everybody to buy into and get sanctioning from specifically the Department of Education.
So thank you very much. I think you've gave us a very, very good picture, I would say, of the landscape of this project. Looking back to the project and what has been delivered, could you give us a success story, one that has kept that got stuck in your mind, and could you also give us another one where you learned from a mistake or from a situation that didn't go as planned?
Andre, the success of the program, if I have a look at, we've activated this program 3 years ago with very, very limited funding, and we've developed this program, every year, we've improved. In the last 3 years, we've activated this program in 500 schools throughout the country. So 500 schools in the country, in fact, we have a footprint now, totally new. This is what we've activated within that particular, let's call it, sector as well. We've trained, right, in excess of 1,500 teachers within that particular sector. That is what we've done in terms of this program. What we've also done is that in 2020, right, the program, the SA Hockey Modified Program, was recognized by the South African Sports Awards. That is the premier awards every year that's held, in fact, to recognize good practice within the South African sector. We qualified for 3 categories. The first category, we walked away with a volunteer of the year. Mervyn Moy was recognized, in fact, because of the work that he's doing within the modified sector and within that particular district. He received, in fact, the volunteer of the year. And that program is based in the Johannesburg area or Gauteng. Secondly, the most developing school, the developing school of the year was a school called Ikwezi, and that school is based, in fact, in an informal settlement in Cape Town called Khayelitsha. 3 of those kids from that particular program have made the Western Province under 13 provincial team, right? Because they were involved in the program for the last 3 years. So that school with very, very limited resources have produced, in fact, top players, right? Because of the opportunity given that they are training on a regular basis. These kids, because of, the opportunities given to them. These guys would train 5 days a week because the equipment is at the school. They train during school hours. you've got, as part of physical education. So their skill level in terms of the technical skills and their physical skills stops. So that is a very, very important, let's call it, contribution to the program. And also, I've been nominated, in fact, because of the program, as Administrator of the Year for 2020, because of the impact, the social impact, in fact, of the program in certain communities. So lessons to be learned for us at the moment now is really the partnership. What we need to do, in fact, is to formalize the partnership now between, the 500 schools that we've identified, right, and try to get some type of throughput that those kids would join local clubs. So that is the next phase, that we need to establish local clubs within the community so that these kids can play within the community and not travel outside the community, because the moment you do that, you increase, in fact, the barriers of participation because of transport costs, as well as, in fact, equipment and facilities as well. So what we're trying to do now is to have regional structures within our communities where players can play. And ultimately, these players are linked to clubs that we need to establish, junior clubs, as the first phase within those communities.
So one last question. What would be your youth hockey development dream?
And for me, it's more systematic. For me, it's more systematic at the moment. If we can get a single integrated hockey program that is funded by the Department of Education and the Department of Sport, right? That would be number one for me, because why? It is a systems program, right? Well, if we can get that sorted out, the endorsement from the Department of Education and the Department of Sport, that will really, really, in fact, put the program well on its way. And then for me, the second one is that the introduction of compulsory physical education within all of the schools, specifically the under-resourced schools, because that is where the kids are, right? That is where the kids are. So that is also a policy, a matter that we are, that we're trying to do at the moment, really, advocating physical education as a compulsory part of as education. So it gives us, in fact, an opportunity to go into those schools and then use our modified games, hockey as a territory game or as an invasion game, as part of the curriculum. And then the last one, as I said again, is compulsory junior sport, club sport now, and get the formalization of junior clubs and schools to form that particular partnership. So for me, it's all about strategy at the moment. But at the moment, our program is well structured. There's a lot of impetus from our volunteers, and our national funder at the moment, he's got an appetite from a social and impact. They like the program because the program is linked to social cohesion and social upliftment of our communities. And on the other hand as well, our formal structure, we have huge opportunity for better competitions at all levels as well.